This is Tyler Blake from Tyler's Comics, and this is the second cover, or this is the standard cover for the second issue of an anthological archive of Greek ghastly horror. So it'll have, the title up here, so I'm leaving that blank. Um, as I'm kind of getting more comfortable with watercolor, I'm doing most of my backgrounds freehand. I have an idea what I'm gonna do, but I'm gonna going forward, I'll mostly be inking like the characters and anything they're interacting with, and maybe one or two key elements of the background, and the rest of it will just be freehand watercolor. If there's something like you know a haunted house, for example, that's very important as in the background, then I would do more detail with the ink on that. But um, so the curator is going to be in a graveyard in the archive, and he has a lantern here on the ground. So there's going to be like intense white, yellow light coming from that. That's kind of like lighting him up here. And then there's going to be probably blue light coming from up top. So I'm kind of planning that out ahead of time. So I know like how far I want to take the solid blacks and all that. So I'm going to just go ahead on and get started. the For those of you who haven't heard, the first issue of however you like to pronounce that. I'm not good at impersonating the Wilhelm scream, so that did fund a week ago today. Actually, it was last Friday, so I'm super excited about that, and I really thank all my backers and people who shared out links to the Kickstarter campaign while it was live. I really appreciate that. So this is something that I've been working on for years, and it's you know my lifelong dream is to work on comics. So thank you. Also, I got to be a guest on my first podcast, and uh, it was also the Artcasters, which I have followed for years, and with Scott Cirkland and Joshua Kemble. And I've been a fan. Like Scott Cirkland was one of the guys that kind of helped me, even though he didn't know it. Like he wasn't giving me pointers, but his YouTube channel helped get me back into art when I had like this soul crushing like 80-hour a week salary job. And when I left that, I was like, you know, I'm gonna go crazy if I don't start drawing again. And Scott's YouTube channel kind of helped me get back into studying this. So I was really excited to get invited to be on the Artcasters. I'm going to not speak for a moment while I do these two lines here. Oh, so the good thing about doing something like this handle when you're inking, so I went outside my line there, right? And that's okay because I can just make that wood grain because it's a wooden shovel handle, and that's the way wood grain works. So sometimes art is about problem solving and just figuring out how to make mistakes you made. Or in this case, mistakes you almost made because I accidentally got my finger on the bristle from my brush pen. I was doing some inking earlier on what was going to be the standard cover of the first issue of my dinosaur comic, and my pen is flowing a little bit freely today, let's say. This off of there into the side. I only put these lines here for the wood grain as a demo. I'll get the rest of the handle later. And I might do that with a technical pen. Okay. So started on the man himself here. I am, as usual, broadcasting, or streaming. You know what I mean? From the cafeteria where I work. So I may get interrupted by friends that just want to say hi or tease me a little bit about being a nerd, or just say hi. And I might get members of the public who come up and say like, "Are you drawing a comic book?" Because I do get that a little bit. Actually, it was kind of funny. A couple of weeks ago, I was working on a page from this comic, my horror comic, and there was this. I was, I think I was filming a time lapse, so I didn't have the audio recording. And this kind of elderly couple came through. It was very sweet. He was pushing his wife in a wheelchair because I work in a hospital, and she motioned him to come by the table where I was sitting because she wanted to see what I was painting. And she's like, "Oh, what are you painting?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm working on my horror comic." And she goes, "Oh, that's very nice." And he wheeled her away. So I think she was hoping, and I do. I do work on like watercolor birds and wildlife stuff. I think she was hoping for something more like that. Like, you know, when I said, "Oh, it's a horror comic," it's like I could see her thinking, "I want to get out of this conversation without being rude." So I'm kind of used to that. I used to work at a retirement home when I was still in Washington, and one of the residents heard that I like to draw, and she's like, "Oh, what kind of artwork do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I do some comic books and I draw a lot of dinosaurs." And I had the exact same reaction. She was like, "Oh, okay." So it's always a little bit funny when it happens. Like that the my friend at the retirement home, she said it a little bit more like, "What do you do? What do you want to do when you grow up, though?" Let's see. I am getting a mystery beep. Oh, I'm going to ignore that because it's a phone call. Hopefully that doesn't come through on this recording. Boy, that's irritating. I do see this big solid black area now because there's quite a lot of it. I think my brush pen might be leaking and slowing heavy because I might be getting close to where I need to change the cartridge. I'm not sure. Excuse me for one moment. I'm hoping to finish inking this today or possibly tomorrow and get the paper shrunk up so I can start doing the watercolor on it. I want to launch the pre-launch page and be able to show the cover as part of that. Excuse me, I have to answer a text. Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to cut this short so I can deal with some work stuff. It looks like. So, happy Friday, y'all, and I will talk to you later.